Hi everybody, this is Matt with Two Chefs in Love, and today we're going to do a quick Instant Pot meal. We're going to do pork carnitas. So today we have 4 to 5 pounds of boneless pork that's diced up in 2-inch cubes. For the sauce that we're going to mix around with the pork, we're using salt, pepper, mustard, oregano, garlic powder, cumin, onion powder. Normally you'd use paprika, but we're gonna substitute that and use a little bit less of chili powder. We're gonna use 1 bay leaf. And then we're also gonna throw a Mojo in there. We're gonna use a Mexican beer. I'm gonna choose Corona. And then minced up garlic, a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, 1/2 cup of orange juice, and then 1 teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon comino, a teaspoon salt, and 1/2 teaspoon black pepper. So first, let's start with making up the paste that's gonna go around the pork. I'm trying to use less dishes and everything, so I'm just gonna kind of put it in here as I go. We're using 2 tablespoons of everything, and then we're gonna mix it all in there by hand. All right, so this is typically a dish that's made in Mexico, and you can use it for all sorts of things. You can put it on tacos, you can put it in enchiladas and make great street tacos. You can also use all sorts of accoutrements to go with it. So pickled red onion is good, or just fresh red onion, white onion, cilantro, lime juice. Some people even put radishes. I'm gonna go a little easy on the chili powder. There we go, that should be fine. And then we're gonna throw in 1 tablespoon of olive oil. There we go. And then just mix it all up. We're gonna throw in a little more olive oil. That's good. A lot of these seasonings are oil or fat soluble, so when you mix it up with oil, it really helps spread around the flavor and gets it into the meat. Normally, if we were doing a slow braise or something, we might want to let this sit for a few hours or maybe even overnight, but when you're using an Instant Pot, it's really good at infusing flavors into the meat. So you can omit that step if you want. All right, so now that we got that all nice and mixed up, I'm gonna wash my hands. We're gonna make the mojo real quick. We already have the Instant Pot going, and we're gonna get it cooking here in a second. Okay, so let's make this mojo up real quick. It's always best to use fresh ingredients. So, fresh orange juice, fresh lime juice, and please don't use the canned or jarred minced garlic. Just mince it yourself, or do what I'm doing. Do a rough chop, and then throw it in one of these. Blenders. I'm using roughly a half to a whole head of garlic, so that could be anywhere from 8 to 15 or so cloves, and I'd say about 5 to 8 tablespoons of minced. So go ahead and throw the juice in. All of our spices. And then we're also going to use a Mexican beer. But for right now, let's just blend this up. Okay. So now that we have that blended up, we're going to throw in about 8 ounces or 1 cup of Mexican lager. And for a 12-ounce container, that should be 3/4 of the bottle. And then we're just going to let that sit tight. We're going to throw in 2 tablespoons of olive oil into our Instant Pot that's been heating up on the Sauté setting, because we're going to sear this meat, set it into a separate container as we go in batches, because the more brown the meat, the deeper and more intense the flavor is going to be. So what's going on right now is we're doing it's called a dry heat cooking, which is different than moist. If you're using water, it's moist, but when using oil, because it sears it off in kind of dry method, almost like baking, but the heat gets in contact with the meat a lot more, because there's more molecules per oil than there are of air, as if you're baking. So it sears it off really well, but it winds up being dry at the end. Whereas if we were boiling it, it would be really kind of wet at the end, but you lose a lot of flavor in that. Where this, you're concentrating the flavor and you're intensifying it by keeping all of the liquid inside the pot. So it really helps to use one pan throughout this whole process, which is why I really like the Instant Pot, because it helps do that. You just got to give it a little bit on each side. Once these are going to be all seasoned and seared off, when we put everything else in there, the pressure inside this pressure cooker is going to push all that flavor, and it's going to meld it all together and develop it into one nice, beautiful dish. It's going to be incredibly well seasoned. And you want to make sure you get all sides on these. See, look at that nice, beautiful Maillard reaction going on with that. And if we had smell-o-vision, you'd be thanking me right now, but this just smells wonderful. All the spices and deep, dark, warming aromas. Typically, this dish, when cooked the traditional way, are cooked in vats of its own fat for hours on end. And it's almost like a braise, but it's a dry cooking method and not a wet, like you would for a traditional braise. But that takes hours upon hours to do. If you could start it super early in the morning, and you wouldn't be done until dinner time. Whereas this, I just got home and started prepping everything. So you could get this done in an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how fast you prep. So these are looking pretty nicely seared. You don't want to let it go for too long, because you don't want the browned bits in the bottom to start burning up. So you gotta keep it moving with this. This is why mise en place is very important. And then for those of you who are new to cooking, mise en place means everything in its place. So that means you do all your prep work beforehand. That way when it's time to go, then you're ready to start rocking and rolling. So when we come back, I'm going to show you how to finish this dish off and get some crispiness, which you might lose from the Instant Pot. So typical pork carnitas, when they're braising in these pots for so long, they start to get crispy around the edges. But we're not really going to see that in here. So when you throw it in the oven on broil, then you can kind of crisp up those edges and have it taste just like it is in Mexico. Start to see all that fond building up down at the bottom. The fond being those little brown bits. As they start to cook faster than the meat itself, It really helps develop the flavor. And then when you put some sort of liquid inside there, then all that deep, richly developed flavor then gets spread out through all of the liquid, and therefore it gets put into the meat. That's why we deglaze the pans with some sort of liquid before we cover it up and start cooking. So for us, what we're gonna do with these, we're gonna make tacos once it's all said and done. 'Cause I don't know about you, but I love a good taco. Okay, so these are starting to look pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and remove these, deglaze the pan with that Mojo, and then throw them back in there. We'll cover it up and then let it go for 30 minutes on high with the sealing vent closed. That way it can build up and maintain that pressure. And once you get to a higher pressure than what you normally can at 1 atmosphere, you can then cook with higher heat. Because most times with boiling or simmering, you can only get it up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So just kind of stir it around. Scrape off that fond down at the bottom. You see it start to release from the bottom of the pan. All right, that's looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and add the meat back in there. And if these aren't totally covered, don't worry about it, because they'll slowly start to break down. The fat will kind of release from the meat, and there will wind up being a little more liquid than meat. Oh, that's gonna be good. And then last thing, we're gonna add, anytime you're cooking pork, it's good to add bay leaves. It takes some of that pork gaminess away, so gonna throw that in there. Now we're ready to go. Okay, so here at the front, we'll cancel whatever that's going on. Pressure, it's already set to 30 minutes. And then we just leave it at that. All right, catch you on the flip side. And then you always got to make sure that this is venting. When this is up, leave it at sealing. And then you're ready to go.